Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anthony podcast. And today I'm joined by Jamie Apps. How are you doing today, Jamie?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
No problem. It's a pleasure to have you on. Would you mind explaining to the audience where they might know you from, please?
So I am a journalist, writer, YouTube creator, podcaster at the moment, bit of everything, create Australian wrestling trading cards as well. But yeah, you probably know me from Pario Magazine. I was part of the Hive last year as well. But yeah, that's the main places you would have seen me of late.
So, in my research for this, I heard you say you studied economics. So, what made you decide to study that?
So I had a economics teacher at school who was my favorite teacher at school, and really enjoyed that class. And yeah, then went on to go to uni. And then at uni, there was a history of economics class where we did a lot of writing, and that rekindled that passion in me, which led me down the media path instead.
So, was the one particularly a writing that really got you motivated to get like into writing, or was it just the class as a whole?
It was mainly, yeah, the class as a whole, but rather than it being a lot of mathematics stuff, it was a lot of like essays and things. And that was really got those gears ticking away in my brain as well.
So, I also heard you say you worked at a local paper. So, what made you decide to go in for that job, or what made you apply for that paper?
So I just finished uni and was just looking for those entry level positions, and the local paper in Sydney was the first option that made the most sense as to get my foot in the door and get a bit of a resume underneath me, and stayed there for almost 8 to 10 years or something. I think I was there for.
So, if you don't mind me asking, how old were you? Like, what sort of age was it? Like early 20s, or was it like late teenager stuff?
So I would have been 22, 23-ish when I started at the paper.
So, so what did you come at in particular?
So I was in the arts section, so we were covering all of the anything from theatre to music to movies that was happening in and around Sydney.
So, so if you look back at that time, what was the one thing that you learned from that time that you tried to take with you, now, working on your own platform?
The time management skills was huge, and just consistency. So I always have something come out at the same time every single week. So whether it's a written feature, a podcast, or one of my reviews at the end of the week, if you look at my website at 9 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, something new will be there.
So why did you decide to leave the paper and really go all in on your own site?
So I did it for a little while where I was doing both
Yeah.
to sort of get obviously the newspaper being Sydney based was very rigid in we can only cover things that are going to be relevant to our readers in Sydney. And I wanted to expand and cover a little bit more that didn't necessarily fit into that mold. So I set my own thing up on the side, and then it eventually grew to the point where I realized I could pivot and go over there fully.
Where? So when did you feel like I can I can leave the paper now and just do my own thing with it? Just a case of Was it just a case of hang on, sorry. When did you feel like okay, it's safe to really put my livelihood into my own site?
So it was a bit of two factors. There was feeling a little bit burnt out doing both was difficult. But then the main thing was I realized that financially it was very even in terms of what each one was bringing in for me. And I figured if I jumped across to my thing solely, I would have obviously more control over it and I could put more effort into it and hopefully grow it beyond what the newspaper was.
So when so I assume from what you're saying there was no hesitation or there was no second guessing, or is that not the case?
No, once I realized that I could do it, it was straight into it. There was no second guessing, no looking back. I'm so glad that I made the jump when I did.
So what would you say to anybody that could be stumbling upon this and say, I would like to do that? What would be your advice for people?
Just to think long about it. Don't rush into anything. Like, I was at that point for probably 6 months before I eventually jumped, but just to make sure that it is going to be consistent. You don't want to go as soon as you have that 1 month where it ticks up to a point where it looks okay. Make sure it stays at that level first before you then jump across, because you don't want to jump and then the bubble bursts.
So, so do you know when you were doing both, did you have to keep your individual platform? I don't want to say a secret. Did you have to keep it anonymous, or would you pretty open about, or would you pretty open about having your own separate thing on the side as well as working for the paper?
No, it was open. Everybody knew about it because I wasn't covering anything that conflicted, so they were totally fine.
So can you remember your first real your first real article that you posted on your own platform and it actually got some traction?
It was probably my interview with Will Osprey. I did an interview with him on the Commentary Booth podcast, and it took off and did crazy numbers, and that's when I was like, oh, okay. There's an option and a pathway here.
Obviously, it's Will Osprey, but why do you think that interview did so well for you? Is it just because of who it was, or do you think you brought something different to the you brought some
So I think it was because it wasn't really a wrestling interview. We were talking about like how film has influenced him over the years. So it gave us a different avenue into his personality, and he really opened up about his battles with sort of dyslexia and those issues. So that really helped, I think.
because I had the interview myself. I just feel like asking the same questions over and over again that everybody's asked. It's pretty boring, to be honest.
Yep, I feel the exact same way. I feel like I go into interviews every week. It's like, it's just the same 6 questions are the base of every interview. But yeah, I always try to find a unique avenue for everyone.
because because that one gem, how insignificant it could be to the interviewee or even to the interviewer, that could really help somebody. That's how I look at it anyway.
Yep, yeah, I'm the same, and it's always the best feeling when someone you're interviewing says, "Oh, I've never heard that question before," or "That's a great question." You go, "Okay, I've done my research properly, and I've done my job well when I've achieved that from someone."
I don't mean this is a bad word, but when I'm interviewing people like yourself, it's a bit more difficult to do research. Because obviously, if you're interviewing somebody with like a big profile, it's easier to get interviewed and to get quotes and figure out how am I gonna word the question differently.
Yep. Yeah, it's easier to research someone that has done hundreds of interviews in the past because you can find all of the
Yeah.
generic stuff already. So then you know there's something different to go for.
So, so as we mentioned before, you a fan of pro wrestling. How did you start watching pro wrestling?
Randomly flicking through the TV channels one day and saw Sting sitting in the rafters of a WCW show. And from that moment, I was like, okay, what is this stuff? And watched everything from then on, basically.
Why do you think Sting's stuck out to you at the time? How old would you have been, if you don't mind me asking?
I would have been 10 to 12. And yeah, I think he just stuck out because it's like the full face paint, the big trench coat, and just sitting in the rafters of this arena, looking down on other wrestlers in the ring. I was like, I don't know what this is. It wasn't sport, but it wasn't a superhero movie. It was something in between, and I was just intrigued by what is happening here. And then you see like someone like a Rey Mysterio or something do some sort of crazy athletic thing. You go, okay, now I'm hooked in. There's a different thing from every performer that gives you something special in every show.
When 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 so when do you realise that pro wrestling was scripted entertainment? Did it ruin your fandom at all?
For me, it didn't because I just looked at it like I am also a fan of movies. So I'm like, well, movies are scripted entertainment as well. So it was nothing out of the ordinary for me. Obviously, you have all of like the people at high school being, oh, you watch that fake stuff. I'm like, yeah, you watch movies and TV shows as well. So who cares?
For myself, I never really got the opportunity to think that it wasn't scripted entertainment, because I was told pretty much straight away. Well, not straight away, but I was told a year into it that it was predetermined. So I never got that. I I never got that heartbreak. If you know what I mean.
Yep. Yeah, like I think that's a good thing for a lot of people. But like when I watch wrestling, it's obviously the athleticism and the sport aspect is important, but I'm watching it for the emotional story beats and the things like that. That's what hooks me in.
Me too. As I've grown older, I've grown to appreciate the promos more. In case you don't know, I have cerebral palsy, so I can't do m- much physical stuff. So even though I can still appreciate the athletic, the athletic, the athletical side, I relate to the promos and to the characters a lot more.
Yeah, yeah, like it's those parts that make it something different. Like you can see crazy athletic stuff in sport every week, but you don't get the emotional storytelling character parts.
Yeah. So once you got introduced to Singh, who were some of the other wrestlers that stood out to you at the time?
Rey Mysterio, because obviously I am a shorter person as well. So I was like, I'm kind of interested in this guy because I feel like I relate to him because we're both smaller guys. And he was just the most crazy athletic person I've ever seen. And then as I grew further into it, it was people like the Thugonomics era John Cena I loved. And then CM Punk and Randy Orton were my two big guys in that sort of era.
What I'm interested to hear, why did you like CM Punk in particular?
During that Thugonomics era, I loved the raps and things that he did. And like I was a hip hop fan as well. So I just connected with it on that level.
What stood out to you about CM Punk in particular?
Punk, it was the sort of rebellious nature and like he felt very real. He didn't feel like a caricature of a person. It felt like that was just naturally him, whereas kind of everyone around him felt like cartoon characters, really.
I agree with that. Especially like in the early, like between the early 2000s up until 2000, 2011, I would say. I personally think on the microphone he was one of the most compelling people in the industry, and even today he still does some decent stuff. But it's not the same energy.
Yeah, I don't think he has. It's like I think he's just grateful to still be in wrestling today. He
Yeah.
doesn't have that like anger and fire that he had in those early days, I think.
And plus, like this current, where can it really go?
Yeah, I think like his option would be maybe TNA, and that would be about it at this point.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned some of your favourites there, but who were some of the wrestlers that you didn't like at the time, but over the years you've appreciated their
I wasn't a fan of The Miz for the longest time until until a bit later when I realized that what he was doing was really well done because he was making people hate him. But at the time, I was like, "Oh, I can't stand this guy." Like, I didn't like his wrestling style. His promos just annoyed me. But then you look back at it and go, he was achieving everything that he was setting out to achieve. He wanted you to hate him, and he did it perfectly.
I always find we trying like them is you're never gonna appreciate them at first, but when you start to quite truly understand storytelling and appreciate how you can draw the reaction from the crowd or from the audience, you do start to appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah, once I started looking at it more as
The performance.
yeah, from that performance aspect and like an analytical standpoint, not just as a fan, that's when I realized, oh, he's doing great work.
So if you could go back and say one thing to the younger fan, Jamie, what would you say?
Ooh, as a younger fan, I'm not sure because like now I would say appreciate it more as a fan, like I was back then, less as a critic and like looking at it thinking, is that good? Is that bad? Like I look back at my younger self and go, that's the way to watch wrestling. Watch it like that.
Yeah, tell me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but do you mean like don't follow anybody else's opinion? Like if you enjoy somebody's work, just enjoy them. Because when I was younger, I used to follow the crowd quite a lot when it comes to when it comes to wrestling opinions.
Yeah, that's probably the best takeaway from it. Yeah, just appreciate what you enjoy. You don't have to like not everyone has to like CM Punk, not everyone has to like The Miz, but some people did.
Yeah, and some people used to pretend like to just because they thought it used to be cool. So did myself, or dislike somebody just because they used to think it was cool.
Yeah, I think that happened with Cena there for a little while where people were booing him just because oh, it's the cool thing to do. Like everybody boos John Cena now. But there was definitely still people in the crowd being like, I love John Cena. John Cena's my favorite. And it wasn't just the little kids.
So, so, when you decided I'm gonna start interviewing and writing articles, what made you decide to come out a wide variety of different arenas, so to speak? Why not? Like, why did you not decide I'm just gonna cover wrestling? I'm just gonna cover music. Why did you decide to be more and did you know what I mean?
I think because that's how people are. Like people don't just love one thing. And I'm like that. Like I love movies. I'm watching movies and TV shows every day for this work, but I also love wrestling and I love like hearing those stories on how people find that creative inspiration and how those different mediums all cross over really. Like wrestlers watch movies. Some movie stars watch wrestling and they take inspiration from all of those. So they seem very disconnected, but really there's a through line between all of them of what we're trying to do is capture emotions and we're just in a different field getting those emotions.
Would you say it's been hard for you to build up an audience? Because I can tell from my own personal experience, it can be quite hard when you're moving about from subject to subject, or you're interviewing people from all different areas of entertainment or sport, whatever it is.
Yeah, if I was to tell anybody that was just starting in this, like going down this path of media and things like that, I would probably recommend that you pick a lane and like a niche for I'm just going to be this thing and build that audience. But I was already all over the place with my newspaper stuff anyway, so I'd already kind of been that diverse journalist anyway. So I felt it would have been weird to leave the newspaper and then just really narrow down onto I'm just going to do wrestling interviews. And I feel like they would have all kind of just became very samey. So I think being diverse also allows me to grow my skills. So then when I do interview a wrestler, I've got skills that I've learned from interviewing a theater actor or a movie director that then feeds back into those other interviews and makes every subsequent interview better than the previous one.
So, had there been an interview where you thought on the personal level, I don't want to say underperformed, but I, had there been an interview where you felt I could have done better with that one?
There's definitely been interviews where I've walked away and 5 minutes after the interview has ended, I've thought of like 3 or 4 different things where I go,
Yeah.
damn it, I wish I'd asked those questions, but it's too late now. We've hung up the call. Like there's nothing to do. But yeah, I think in the moment, I've never felt like this interview is off the rails and terrible. I've always felt like I've got something good out of it. It's just in hindsight, I look back and go, I could have got a little bit more.
Like sometimes it's not the interviewer's fault. Like sometimes the interviewee can just not be up to it that day or cannot be interested that day for whatever reason. And I just feel like as an interviewer, as long as you stay as long as you stay focused on what you're doing, all you can do is ask ask the questions that you're going to ask. And then if the person not interested, then there's nothing you can do.
Yep. Yeah, like I've interviewed people from all spectrums of where they are on their career. So I've had people that are towards the end of their career, people that are right in the height peak of their career. And I've interviewed a lot of people that are just starting out. And I find the people that have done lots of interviews, they're super easy because they know that they can't give you those short 1 or 2 line answers. Those younger people, it feels like you kind of have to pull stuff out of them and like really get them to open up. And they're the most challenging interviews, but sometimes they're the most fun too because
Then,
you have to work hard as an interviewer.
but I also feel like sometimes if you're interviewing somebody that's had a long career in whatever they're doing, sometimes they can be like, not another interview and be like really disinterested. Have you ever had that before?
Most people have been pretty good, and I've been lucky. Anytime I've done sort of those press junkets where it's a celebrity sitting down and doing half a dozen interviews in a row, I'm usually quite early because of the Australian time. So I'm usually one of the first people in their list. So that's good. I get in before they get burnt out.
Hmm? Cause you know, when they're doing those press junkets, they've probably got one or two that is just on there to get under their skin and to basically wind them up. And it must be like, as somebody that's never done a proper press junket, it must be quite intimidating sometimes when you're first starting out. So did you feel intimidated?
A little bit. The biggest one was it was just the other day, it was 10 years ago. I interviewed Samuel L. Jackson and Kurt Russell for the Hateful Eight press junket. And that was like one of my first really big in person interviews. And I was sitting in the lobby waiting to go into that interview room. And I was sweating. That was a lot of nerves, a lot of intimidation, knowing that I was going in to speak to such high profile people. But like I said, I was early, so I think I got in at a good time before they were flustered and had like I've seen some of those interviews where it's just like, let's play this silly game, and you can tell that the interviewee is just standing there going, I don't want to do this. I just want to talk about my movie or my new album. I don't want to play some silly like trivia game.
I can understand that. But on the other side, I can understand why people do them silly trivial games because they try to make it different. But sometimes you can try too hard to make it different, and it comes across as really awkward for the other person involved.
Especially, I think, like, I don't know how often they give these people a heads up on, oh, we're going to do this thing. We're not necessarily going to chat about the specifics of making the film or making the album. We're going to come in and we're going to play like this trivia game or like taste test thing of like, here, eat some Vegemite and stuff like that. I hope they give them more heads up than that rather than kind of ambushing them in the moment. But yeah, you can definitely tell the ones where like, I didn't know this was coming and I'm not a fan of this.
If I'm being honest, if that happened to me, I would be slightly annoyed because I'll take my, obviously, like, obviously, it's like a trade-off. If I'm giving people the opportunity to interview me, I would hope they would come with something interesting. Like, you know what I mean? I know it's a trade-off. Like, obviously, 'cause they get to promote whatever they're, whatever they're promoting, whatever they're promoting. But still, you wanna come with something a bit more original than just, than just, in my opinion, a silly game.
Yep. Yeah, I'm the same. I would prefer to go in with something and try and get something insightful out of the interview, not just, oh, that's going to be a funny TikTok reel or TikTok post for 10 minutes and then it's going to just fade away into obscurity. I prefer to have something that has some insight and can have longevity in terms of after the movie comes out, people might still come back and find value in it.
But at the end of the day, everybody's different, and as long as you're not hurting anybody, just do what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Like different outlets, like different things suit different outlets. But yeah, I'm always
Yeah.
try and find something insightful. And like for that Hateful Eight interview, I watched that movie 4 times before I went into that interview. And that's a long movie. So I put in probably 12, 15 hours of preparation for a 5-minute interview.
So when you're watching a film, and when you're watching a film like that, yeah, and you're doing it as a way to get questions. Do you stop the movie as you're watching it and write stuff down, or do you just think about it and try to remember it for the end?
So if I know it's for an interview, I will usually watch it once just without notes, without anything, just watch it for the general experience of watching a movie. And then I'll go back and watch it again with a notepad and just note down a couple of like dot point type things. That's something I want to ask a question about and have that written down. And then I can sit down and formulate questions based on, oh, I wrote this note down.
What the most surprising answer you've ever gotten? I didn't expect that answer.
I've definitely had questions where I asked about like the inspiration and it was totally opposite of what I thought. So like I asked about an Australian film recently, Kangaroo Island. I asked about the religious connotations that were in the movie, and they're like, "Oh, that really didn't play a factor until the very last segment main thing was about family, and then the religion part only came in at the very end, and it wasn't a key factor. It was just a little thing that made sense in the moment at the end, and they popped that in. I was like, oh, I thought I picked it up woven throughout the entire film. So that's the beauty of cinema. Like people take different things from the same movie.
What the nice sorry, what is the nicest compliment you've ever had from an interviewee? Like your interviews.
Anytime that they, like I said, they say that that's a question I've never heard, that's always great. And then I've had a couple of interviews where I finished and they went, you actually came with a lot of insight and thought long and hard about this film for these questions, right? And I'm like, yeah, like I watched your movie 3 times. I hope I got something special out of it. And anytime somebody says like, yeah, that was a really insightful interview and I'm glad we got to do that, that's always the biggest compliment.
Have you always been curious like trying to find out as much information as you can, or is that something that you've developed over the years?
No, I've always been a massive nerd. My mum calls me a nerd all the time, and like we'll watch The Chase on TV, like the trivia show, and sometimes like I'll answer a question and then give my explanation for the answer, and then that ends up being the same explanation that the chaser gives, and my mum just looks at me and is like, "You are the biggest nerd." And like I sit on the internet and read history and things like that all the time. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's just my nature.
I find I feel like sometimes nowadays it can be portrayed as a bad thing. Obviously, it can be a bad thing if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, but I think most of the time, curiosity can be a good thing. It shows that you care.
Oh, 100%. Like I love reading Wikipedia articles and things like that. And then documentaries are one of my favorite things to watch as well. Like, if I'm not watching a film or a TV show for review purposes or something like that, I'm digging through Netflix and HBO and Disney trying to find crazy documentaries to watch.
What is the one documentary that's really inspired you? Not just in what we're doing here, but just in life.
One of the greatest documentaries I ever watched was it's a wrestling documentary by Colt Cabana called The Wrestling Road Diaries.
Yeah.
And it's got Colt Cabana, Nigel McGuinness, and Brian Danielson. Just as Brian and Nigel were signed to WWE, it's like their last independent tour, and that's just like
Did,
really insightful into what life on the road was like, where they drew inspiration from, and how a lot of the sacrifice they made, and that's inspirational in terms of like, yeah, sometimes you go through tough things, but it's the people that are around you that make it special. And then if you work hard, you can achieve your dreams.
do you like do you like do you like do you like other sport? Do you like other sport as well?
Yeah, I'm a big cricket and darts fan. So I'm forever watching either darts or cricket on TV.
I don't mind the darts. I can't really watch cricket. It's too long for me.
Yep. Yeah, test match cricket can be a bit of a grind for some people.
I don't mind the dart though, because they got quite a good atmosphere.
But yeah, they really ramp up the sort of the party atmosphere in those venues.
Do you do you watch do you watch do you want the 5 day cricket, or do you want the 20 overs, or
I've watched both. I watched all of the Ashes this year against England, so I had a great time as an Australian. Probably not so much for the English.
I as I say, I can't watch the Ashes. I get bored after the first day. Oh, I'll forget that it's on the next day.
Yeah, yeah. I think 25 days of cricket over the course of 2-3 months can probably be a bit much.
So if you go back, if you were to look at if we were to look at your childhood, could you imagine? Could you imagine you'll be doing what you would be doing what you're doing now? What I mean is, you were as a child, can you imagine you'll be doing what you're doing now?
No, I never expected to be interviewing some of the people that I've interviewed. There's every few months, there's a pinch me moment of I don't know how I am speaking to this person right now.
Do you prefer to interview talent that are on the rise or established talent, whether that's in music or whether that's in wrestling or whatever?
I take pride in showcasing the people that are on the rise and like coming up through the scene, regardless of whether it's music, film, wrestling, whatever. And then those ones with the big stars, they're like the payoff for those interviews. So you do that hard work of establishing, getting those people up there, and then every few months you get the opportunity to interview like a dream guest like Samuel L. Jackson or Dallas Green from City and Color was one that was just nuts to me because that's my favorite band.
So, so how, how would you say how important is
Oh, in the media space, it is vital because like I think if I had tried to start out without doing those years at the newspaper, it would have been very, very difficult. But because I was there when I was preparing to leave, I was able to just contact all of the sort of the PR reps and people that I'd interviewed and spoken to in the past, and they all wanted to keep that connection moving forward into my own thing. So that's really helped me get that access to people that otherwise may not have had anywhere near the opportunity to get.
not to talk about exams too much? That is a problem I have. Like, I don't feel awkward about reaching out to people, but not because I don't want to talk to them, but I just don't want to feel like I'm bothering them.
Yeah, that is a challenge. That's one of those things where you kind of just. I look at it now as the worst thing they can do is ignore the question. Like, if I send out an email or ask someone if they'd be interested in doing an interview and they don't respond, oh well, that's just part of the game. It's like you've got to throw out a lot of lines, and every now and then you'll catch a fish.
Yeah, to feel the kind of, do you know when I sent you I can do it a bit later on my time. That internally, I felt a bit guilty because I was asking to get up even earlier than what you are now.
That's what I ended up waking up this morning at 5 o'clock anyway, so it would have been totally fine to do 6.
Yeah, I guess it's trying to find that balance between being persistent but not being overly eager as well.
Yep. Yeah, like I will. There was a moment. There's a few people on my bucket list to interview, and I usually just like I'll send them a message or an email like once every 6 or 12 months, like, hey, I'm still keen to do this if you're ever interested in chatting, and hoping that like I'm not going to sit there and contact them every week. That seems excessive, but I think once every 6 or 12 months is totally reasonable. And
Yeah,
fingers crossed, one
yeah.
day they'll say, "Yeah, we're cool. Let's do it."
As you mentioned earlier, as you, as you when you first started getting into wrestling, you started to gravitate, to people like John Cena and Rey Mysterio and CM Punk and Sting. You, you had the opportunity to interview John Cena. So what was that like?
That was surreal. That was another one of those "how is this happening" moments. That was thankfully the newspaper helped with that one because we were able to cover it on both platforms. But yeah, it was still one of those moments where I was like, I can't believe I'm speaking to John Cena right now.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm a bit envious because I started watching wrestling when John Cena debuted. Literally when John Cena debuted in 2002, that was my first, that was my first ever wrest, wrestling mem- wrestling memory. And
That's
I'm
a good one to
and
have.
and I haven't stopped watching it since. So it's been a long time. So I'm quite envious that you're fortunate to interview John Cena.
Yeah, that was very cool. How did you feel about his retirement last year? Or over the last year?
To be honest, in my mind, John Cena retired years ago. In my mind, you know what I mean? Because he wasn't around for years. Like in my mind, this retirement run, which is like a little bit of an extra run, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was more like a formal celebration and send off, not
Yeah,
necessarily a
yeah.
retirement tour.
Like, do you know when people come back for one more run? That's what it felt like to. That's what it felt like to me.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It didn't feel like the end of his career. It just felt like an encore of a concert, basically.
Yeah. So, so what did you think of the heel turn? I know you don't really want WWE like that anymore. Be, but obviously you must have heard about the heel turn. So what did you think about when you heard about this?
The moment itself, I loved. I thought that was awesome. The follow up, I wasn't the biggest fan of, and then especially when it just kind of all of a sudden they were like, oh, let's just flip it back to him being a babyface. That was a bit weird, but the actual turn at I think it was at Mania, that was awesome.
Honestly, even at the moment, I was like, it was cool, but I was like, why are we doing this? We've only got 6 months left, and in hindsight, was it really worth it?
Yeah, I think it was good for that social clip, and then that was about it. It didn't really have any legs in terms of this help in this moment.
In hindsight, it probably would have been better if Cody turned heel in hindsight.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think Cody's ever going to do that. He needs it. I think Cody needs that refresh moment, but yeah,
It's probably gonna do it in years' time when nobody really cares. When nobody really cares anymore.
yeah, potentially. I would love to just see him fully lean into the Homelander inspiration and gimmick and just like go full evil American Superman.
I do say I don't think he'll ever do that because if he was gonna do that, he would have done it in AEW, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I wish he had.
Going back to your story. Has there been an interview where you've been like, I wish, I wish, I wish I could have had longer.
Yeah, there's definitely moments like that, especially in those sort of press junkets where you get 10 minutes at most. There's a lot of times where I wish I had 15 or 20. My interview with Brian Danielson last year, we had maybe 15 minutes. And I still had half a dozen questions on my list of things to touch on when they went, oh, you've got 2 minutes to go. And I was like, okay, well, we better quickly wrap this up now.
Uh, by the way, I watched that interview and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I was really proud of that one.
I think I can guess what you're gonna say. Do you prefer longer interviews or do you prefer shorter interviews?
I prefer the longer ones, but I'm also not rigid on you have to do 30 or 40 minutes. Like I want the interview to just be as long as it needs to be to get everything out. Like all of the key elements of I want to explore this thing and this thing. Like I always try to go in with a plan of because I'm writing these interviews afterwards for articles, I always try to go in with this is what I want to be the framing of this interview. So if I can go in with that and then however long the interview needs to be to get that story across, that's what I want. So that's why if you look at my YouTube channel, my interview ranges are all over the place. 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, like they're just all over the place of whatever in that moment that interview needed to be.
Yeah, and So sometimes I feel like if you go for too long, you end up making the other person feel like I don't want to say get bored, but you start to lose the other person in terms of engagement. Not all the time, obviously, but it can happen, obviously, as well.
But yeah, there's definitely interviews that go too long, and I always try to avoid that. As long as I feel like as long as you are speaking about what they're passionate about, you can have people will talk for as long as you want. It's the moment when you start trying to drag them into places they don't necessarily want to go, that's when they might disengage and it can feel like it's dragging.
That's why I say it's always better off. Well, not always, but I feel like it's better to have your own platform. That way you can just be yourself and you don't have to drag the interviews into areas that you don't want it to go to just because you might have somebody hiring you in like a newspaper, for example, and they want the juiciest headline that you can get.
Yep, I found that in the newspapers, especially when I was working on a cover feature or something. They obviously want to sell the newspaper, so they need something big and dramatic out of the interview for it to be worthy of a cover spot. But I'm like, there's not always those big juicy details in interviews. Sometimes people are just nice people.
and and sometimes the person knows what you're doing and they're not gonna bite. So when they're going more onto you. So when you decide to, I'm gonna start doing live streams, like watching shows like Wrestle Kingdom last yeah, I think no sorry, not last year, this excuse me. What made you feel like what made you feel comfortable to start doing live streams?
So I'd experimented with them when AEW launched Rampage. I sort of started experimenting with live streaming then. Doing it solo is hard. So when the Hive came up and then they wanted to expand and do the AEW streaming for Dynamite,
Yeah.
I joined forces with Peggy, which has been incredible, super fun. So yeah, we did the Dynamite streams for a while, and then the Hive went on hiatus for Christmas break, and Wrestle Kingdom was coming up, and I knew I was going to watch Wrestle Kingdom anyway. Let's see if any of the other guys on the Hive wanted to jump in and do a watch along, and we did it, and it was incredibly successful. It was 5.5 hours on stream, which was pretty rough. That was a long time. That's probably too long, in my opinion. It was crazy. Yeah, so then just a week or two ago, Peggy hit me up and went, why don't we bring the Dynamite live streams across to your channel? And I was like, yeah, sweet, let's do it. And that was another really fun stream.
I'm not just saying this because you're on my show. But I think I really enjoy your bit. I really enjoy you and Peggy live stream together. I think you both off of each other quite well.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Like we hadn't done anything together until that very first live stream, and it just immediately clicked. We've had people tell us it's like we're brother and sister. We have that like let's niggle each other the whole stream, and it's really fun, and I think it's entertaining, and I think that was proven when obviously the Hive closed, and we came across and did it on my channel last week, and it felt like everyone that was watching previously jumped across with us, which we weren't sure was going to happen, but I think that proved that we did capture something special with that.
Because if I'm posting on social media, I'm really looking forward to it. If I'm posting on social media, I'm looking forward to this. Whatever. That says a lot, because I don't really post on social media, like, really, like that like that often.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. Like we've said multiple times on the show, like the show wouldn't work without people watching us. Like we'd just be speaking into the ether. So we really appreciate like having people like yourself that look forward to the show and come in and chat away and have fun with us.
I don't really get involved in a live chat because I just prefer to watch it on the TV like I do in most programming.
Yep. That's also appreciated. Like without the people watching it, it wouldn't be worth it for us in terms of the time spent, the internet, and all of that sort
And,
of
al-
stuff. So
and also, on my time, it's 1 o'clock in the morning,
yeah, that's
and,
rough.
I'm getting old.
That's very rough. So yeah, we very much appreciate people like yourself that watch it at crazy hours like that.
They mentioned earlier that success. You put the Wrestle Kingdom stream as a success. What is success to you?
So obviously, as a publisher and creator, I'm always looking at the analytics and probably way too much than I should be. But there was incredible amounts of people watching. The amount of people that like watched for a vast majority of the show with us. Like I said, it was 5.5 hours, and we didn't expect so many people to hang around for so long. So that was awesome. Just anytime, it was a success also in that we had fun. Myself, JPJ, and Arnie Collins, we had a great time. So that made it successful in my mind. We didn't all just sit there and feel obligated to be there. We were having fun together and a nice experience hanging out watching some awesome wrestling.
So what is success to you on the personal level, if you don't mind me asking?
As long as I feel happy with what I'm doing, it's a it's a very personal thing of just like, am I happy in what I'm doing? Am I proud of the output that I'm creating? Like, as long as I feel that sense of satisfaction, it's a success because like, if I'm happy with what's coming out there, it will ultimately find an audience. But if it doesn't, that's fine. I'm still proud of the output.
If you don't answer this, it's okay, but how do you deal with a long distance relationship?
It's tough. It's very tough. But we speak on the phone essentially every day, and then we have a weekly date night. So for me, it's Saturday morning. For her, it's Friday night. We'll sit down and we'll pick a movie and hit play at the same time and watch that movie and chat about it the whole way through. And it's just making the time for each other is the important thing.
Did, I imagine you also do video calls like this.
Yep. Yeah. So when I say we talk on the phone, it's like FaceTime. It's not. So yeah, we see each other every day basically.
It's not too, so it's actually not too bad then. I guess with modern technology, it's basically like any other relationship, really.
Yeah. It's not ideal, obviously, but it's not as bad as it would have been 10 or 15 years ago.
It's not like you have to send those cards backwards and forward, is it?
No.
Like 15 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. The hardest part is like, it's so expensive to get to be in the same room. Like, to travel it's not 5 hours via a road trip. It's 22 hours of plane travel.
So my last and final question is, what's the one bit of your work you would show people if you wanted to give somebody a sample? If you wanted to give somebody a sample, please, of what you're about.
One. I could give you three, which is really tough, but I
You
think
can do that if you want to.
the Brian Danielson interview, I am, like I said, very proud of, especially because it was like, I was given like less than 24 hours notice on that one. So I'm very proud of that one. The Will Ospreay interview is also incredible because it is quite personal from his perspective. And then the interview with Samuel L. Jackson and Kurt Russell is just like insane that I got to be in the same room as them, and they clearly enjoyed the questions as well, which was great. I think those three give you a good example of the growth of me as a creator as well, because it was Samuel L. Jackson and Kurt Russell was, like I said, 10 years ago. Osprey, I think, was 6 or 7 years ago, so that's like in the middle. And then Danielson was just last year. So you get that full spectrum of how I've developed as a creator as well.
So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving me and the supporters some of your time. I want to give you the floor to promote anything that you want to promote, any project that you got coming out. It's your time. If you want to give them a quick plug.
Awesome. I will just say, yeah, firstly, thank you so much for having me on. It was a real pleasure. In terms of promotion, if you just hit up my website, pariomagazine.com.au, all of the articles are there, all of the links to the videos and the podcasts are all there. And you can purchase the physical magazines as well on that website, or the Australian Wrestling Trading Cards, which is another sort of creative outlet for me as well, where we celebrate the best of the best in Australian wrestling via custom designed and made trading cards.
I'm sorry, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. Have you always been interested in the Australian independent scene, or is it something you got into as you started to cover it?
I've always, or from 2013, I went to my first Australian independent show when I sort of fell off WWE and was like into the Ring of Honor, PWG, like American indie scene, and then
Yeah,
found Australian indie wrestling and went to a show that had a young Rhea Ripley on it when she was 16 years old on like one of her first matches of ever. And from that moment, I was hooked on Australian independent wrestling, and I watch Aussie wrestling every week.
so I apologise. I just wanted to get that question out there before we wrapped up because I wasn't going to ask you, but I forgot about it. So I want to say thank you for your time, and I want to say thank you to everybody for giving us some of their time, and thank you for the support, everyone. Have a good day. Stay safe. Bye bye.